Good afternoon and welcome to the Andel Institute. It's a pleasure to have you here. If this is your first time with us, thank you for joining us today. My name is Brett Holloman. I'm the Chief Philanthropy Officer here at the Institute. And this afternoon, we're joined by our Chief Education Officer, Tara Tarango, who's providing information for us on a focus on education in America today. Tara is a passionate and innovative education professional who works each and every day to help teachers create environments where students' curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking can thrive within the classroom. Some of you may know when the Institute was founded in 1996, Jay and Betty Van Andel envisioned an organization that would serve as a beacon of hope within their community, supported by two pillars: biomedicine, biomedical research, and science education. Betty Van Andel herself was an educator, and both of the Van Andels believed strongly in the power of education to not only change lives for the better, but to bring discoveries about amongst the global world. Today, the Institute is home to a nationally accredited graduate school. We have approximately 34 students enrolled in our graduate school program from over 10 different countries. And then Tara and her staff work directly with students in grades kindergarten through grade 12, as well as educators from many different places as well. At the heart of the Institute's educational philosophy are the concepts of inquiry-based learning, allowing students to solve problems and collaborate to discover innovative solutions. The inquiry-based learning model emphasizes self-directed learning and problem-solving as the cornerstone, and it is applied both within the Van Andel Institute Graduate School as well as our K-12 programs. Today, as I mentioned, we have a champion of the Institute's educational philosophy and a strategic thinker who has more than 15 years of experience in educational publishing and services. Before joining the Institute, Tara served as president of SDE, one of the largest providers of professional development for pre-K through grade 12 educators in the U.S. Before that, Tara developed award-winning print and digital curriculum with Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, who's the largest educational publisher in the nation. Tara is an expert in instructional climate and culture and has devoted her career to increasing curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking in the classroom. Please join me today in welcoming our featured speaker, Tara Tarango.
All right, hello everybody. Thank you for that nice introduction, Brett. It's always a little awkward when you hear somebody talking about yourself like that. You're like, who is that? Who's he talking about? So I'm delighted to spend lunch with you today and talk a little bit about education in America and Michigan and right here at the Van Andel Institute. I'm curious, first of all, how many of you were aware that there was a K-12 initiative as part of the Van Andel Institute? Okay, maybe about a third of you. So thank you. Help us spread the word. Those of you that didn't know, you're in for a treat to learn a little bit about what we do, but also about how we fare. I want you to come away with a little bit better understanding about where education is going right now and some of the things that we might need to be thinking about as a community to support teachers and students in their endeavors. So as Brett mentioned, the Van Andel Institute was formed about 20 years ago, and the mission is to improve health and enhance lives, which is a great, audacious, big goal and a hard goal, right? And a lot of folks know about what we do in terms of biomedical research, but if you really want to enhance lives, it's more than just searching for a cure that might happen, 10, 15 years from now, or also about preparing that next generation of children to be ready to take the mantle from those that are studying science right now, or beyond science, the problems that we don't even know we're going to be facing. How do we create those critical thinkers and problem solvers of tomorrow? So I was really delighted to join the Institute, a place that had sort of this foresight, I think, to really think about an institute that thought about both of those sides, not just research or just education. There's very few institutes that I know of that have this sort of dual mission to think about biomedical research and sort of innovative education. So I'm delighted to be a part of that. Here's what we're in for today. So your lunch, your time's valuable. I want to make sure this is what you care about. If it's not, you can leave. You won't hurt my feelings. We'll talk a little bit about where we stand, I say in the world we know, right, with sort of the metrics and benchmarks that we're used to thinking about in terms of where as a country and as a state we stand. We'll also look at where we stand in the world we don't necessarily know. What does the future hold, and are we preparing students for that future, even though we don't know really what it looks like? Then I picked 4 curriculum and instruction, I hate the word trends because it sounds sort of fleeting, but practices or influences that, or something if you're looking to pick a fight with grandma at the dinner table at Christmas, they might give you some fodder for that. But some things that are going on that you might want to know about. And then a little bit about what we're doing as an institute to try to be part of the solution and what you can do to help as well if you have a passion for education. So that's what we're in for. First, I want to find out a little bit about who you're. First of all, any educators in the room? Who is an actual teacher? Yay! Oh, I'm delighted. Thank you for coming. I welcome you to share your thoughts as we go through this. If you have questions, things to add, I appreciate that. So on that note, can't take the teacher out of me. So this is going to mortify some of you, but I'm going to throw the ball at you. And when I do, you get to choose. This is all about student choice and voice, right? So if you catch the ball or if someone throws it at you or your food, whatever, you can choose one of these questions to answer. We'll do about 4 or 5 of these, okay? So you can either choose, why is this topic of education important to you? What do you hope to learn today? Or who was your favorite teacher and why? So just a quick answer, if you will. So, all right, who's feeling unlucky? There we go. Go for it. Oh, I might need to.
So probably the teacher that had the biggest impact on me was a coach in high school. Because they don't put up with any BS. They can tell you the things that your parents can't.
All right.
Here we go. Now you're mic'd.
Great. Good afternoon, Nancy Mikas. I would say that my favorite teacher wasn't a teacher, but was a counselor in high school. I looked at him and I said, I want to do what you do one day. What do I got to do? He said, become a teacher. I said, done. I'll become one. I taught for a little while, and now I'm still happy to be in the education world. So counselors, they do a lot more than what we think.
Absolutely. That's an inspirational story. All right. Who's the next unlucky person? Throw it somewhere else. All right. We got a staff member.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Ryan Duncan, and I would have to say my favorite teacher was a history teacher named Mr. Franz, because he was very into hands-on sort of project-based learning, and it really made history amazing and fun and just come alive, and you could just tell everyone in the room enjoyed learning and being in his class.
All right, give another toss. Oh, right in the middle. Okay. All right, I'm on it. Don't worry. We're going to show some love over here. All right. Oh, look, somebody wants the ball. I love it. Coming at you. Now see if you want it. I can't do it. All right. Thank you. Sorry.
My name is Kathy Albro, and I believe that education is the great equalizer, and that every child and every person in this world deserves an opportunity to be educated.
Absolutely. Love that. Let's do 2 more.
2 more?
All right, come back here. Nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. It's like the ping pong ball. It's going to land on you. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Shel Hiscock. I'm new to West Michigan, so I came to hear what's going on here. Favorite teacher, Mrs. Rosenquist, high school English. She looked at me when I was about 13 and Vietnam War was just coming to an end, and I was troubled by some of the things that were happening there and asking questions that my mother and father weren't able to or weren't willing to answer, and she just said, Shel, you got a good heart, keep asking questions. So.
Love it. All right, 1 more.
All right, good catch.
With that push it to you.
Bag of chips and it's.
I know, so sorry. Hello. I work for an awesome school district, so this topic's important to me simply because we do our best every day to give our kids the best that we can do and give them a good future and prepare them. And there's just a lot of changes, so this topic is important to the 3 of us who are here from our school district today.
What school district are you from?
At Seago Public Schools.
All right, nice, welcome. Thank you. All right, looks like some of you wanted to actually do some more. All right, we'll just let that lie right there. So nobody answered what you hope to learn today, which I was kind of hoping for because I had too much to talk about. I was trying to get some information to gauge it, but we'll do that as we go here. So thanks for sharing both your passion for teachers, because at the end of the day, I believe teachers are the solution to any problems we have in education. Sometimes they're posed as the problem, but I really believe they're the teachers. So those of you that showed appreciation to your teachers, I thank you on their behalf. And those of you who shared your passion for the subject, I also thank you because I share that passion as well. All right, a little bit about me. First of all, I literally almost wore that dress, which would have been really embarrassing. So I'm so glad. So other than not having an extensive fashion wardrobe, what you should know about me, as you can probably tell already, I love teachers, I love students, and I really came to kind of appreciate teachers for the most part with the fact that my mom was a teacher. And that showed me how hard the job was. I remember her coming home, sometimes in tears, just trying to do the job well is not possible. You just don't have the support and the time and everything you need to really do the job in the way that you would want to do it. So that gave me from a very early age an appreciation of teachers and a drive and a fire to make it better. So I've spent a lot of time in professional development, working with teachers and helping them bring out the best that they want to see in their classrooms. And also working with students to kind of just really foster that curiosity in them. And I've also worked on the curriculum side, developing everything from leveled readers, which is a whole lot of fun, all the way to social studies programs, math programs. And one of the things that was exciting to come here was to sort of incorporate science into that as well. So a little bit about me. I also want to share, I promise I'll get to the agenda in a minute, but I tend to meander a little bit, just kind of why this is important to me, why I think kind of what drives me in education all the time. And I think about any given student that you might know, any child, let's say probably 3rd grade through high school. If you have trouble, whether you're a teacher or whether you're a grandparent or a parent, just trying to get through to them and are you hearing me? Are you even registering that I'm there? It's because they have a lot going on in their heads. All of us do, right? But any given time, this is a typical kid that I might know, but you could probably come up with your own list of all the things that might be going through their head at any given time. And some of them are obviously trivial, ridiculous, and some of them not so trivial at all, right? Really weighty stuff. And as a teacher or as someone who cares about this kid, how can I break through all of that? To me, the only answer is you have to have content that's actually relevant to them. So the first thing for me that drives me is making content that's relevant to be able to drive through all the noise that's in their head. The next thing that drives me kind of stems from this cartoon. I expect you all to be independent, innovative, critical thinkers who will do exactly as I say. I don't really know any teacher who doesn't want their kids to be independent, critical thinkers. They all want this. We all want this for our kids. But the reality is, from the way we all went through school, maybe, we sometimes fall back into, doing exactly what I say, because that's all we have time to get through this, right? So the other thing that drives me is teaching skills that actually matter, like critical and creative thinking. Those are the things that I know are going to matter in the future. So those are the things that drive me. And finally, I think educators sometimes can be a very humble crowd. We don't always like to take the spotlight. We like to stand in front of our students. But sometimes sort of professional ambition is kind of looked down upon a little bit. And I want to change that. I think it's okay for teachers to want to be the rock star of their classroom, to be a teacher that actually matters to their kids and that the kids remember. So I want to do that, right? To kind of summarize, I want to teach content that actually matters and breaks through the noise. I want to teach skills that actually matter and are going to matter 100 years from now. And I want to be a teacher that actually matters to as many kids as I possibly can. Those are the things that kind of at least drive me every day when I'm working with either teachers or students or our staff, what kind of bring us to come to work every day and the work that we do. So I promised you I'd get back to the agenda. Here's sort of where we stand in the world we know. What does that look like? So hot off the press is the PISA report from 2018. This is a report that's a test that's given internationally. I think it's 70-something schools, 78 nations take this test. And so it was last done of 2015 and then 2018. If you're looking for where the United States falls, I'll give us a solid, if I was scoring it, I'd give it a meh. That's our official score, it's probably a meh. We're right there sort of in the middle group. The group in the, let's see if I can figure this out. Yeah, here in the green, those are nations that scored above 500 on this test. Here in the sort of orange-yellow are between 450 and 500. And below 450 here in the red are those countries. This is an average of scores across reading, science, and math. So if you break that out a little bit, give you a little bit more insight. In reading and science, we tend to be slightly above the average score. In math, we're slightly below the average score. This is a bit of an improvement. In 2015, the ranking was 31, so a little bit better. But again, kind of a solid meh, right? And given the wealth and opportunities in this country, it just feels like there's potential to do better on that particular metric. How about Michigan as a state? If I were to do this one, I'd kind of give it a meh minus, right? A little bit less, still in the meh category. Ranked 31, again, if we were to average math, science, and reading across 4th and 8th grade. This is on the NAEP test that So if we look at those, there's a little bit of trends you can see differently. We tend to do a little bit better in 8th grade than we did in 4th grade. We do a lot of work in middle school science, so I'm taking a little bit of credit for our group on that. So if you look at it, the same trend that we saw nationally, where math is a little bit more of a struggle for us, is also a struggle here in Michigan. The other thing I would say, a metric we know about, if you just ask most kids, do you like school? Most kids are bored in school. 45% of students are disengaged. That's almost half of our kids, and if you're not engaged, you're not achieving, and that's just not acceptable to me, that half our kids don't even have the chance to achieve because they're not even engaged. So we really believe that engagement is the first step to really cracking that achievement net. They have to know that we care about them and that this is a place where they want to be and want to participate. So I like to give you that context because people want to know, where do we stand? How's that work? What are those metrics? But I also want us to think a little bit more about the things that we don't know. Because if we continue to use those metrics, PISA or the NAEP test, or whatever standardized tests the different states are using, I would ask us to just think for a minute, are they really measuring or testing the things that we think are, or that we actually value? So let's think about the skills that we value as a society and what we need to be valuing in the future, and maybe reevaluate the way we think about how we measure ourselves and benchmark ourselves. So some things to consider. 1997, a year after this institute was founded. Anybody remember Deep Blue? Deep Blue defeating the chess champion Garry Kasparov. That was in 1997. It was a narrow margin, but it was a big win for the computer, right? Fast forward a few more years later, 2011, and IBM's Watson defeats Ken Jennings, the most winningest Jeopardy champion at the time. And the reason why that I think is really significant is Ken Jennings went into that really believing that he was going to win. He was a computer programmer. He knew the sort of limitations of computers and language in particular, and he talked about how Jeopardy questions are really language puzzles. There's a lot of double meanings, a lot of literary allusions and things like that, that just a computer, there's no way that they could potentially even, be able to master that. But there's the winning score right there. You can see Watson had a commanding lead, and if you can read really closely there, I think he says, "I, for one, welcome our new computer overlords." I hope that was a little bit of a stretch, but it was a big step. Fast forward even more recent, past 2014. How many of you have an Alexa? Yeah, I do too. I don't think I can cook dinner without her anymore, setting the timer. So now we have virtual assistants in our houses, right? Many of us. Here's another kind of troubling look at what does that mean for us. If you think it's just taking away jobs from game show contestants or from personal assistants or from chess players, it's taking a lot of jobs and really changing them. So the per capita income of our country has continued to grow since the mid-90s, but you can see around 2000, the median household income hasn't continued to grow with it, right? So technology is taking over more and more jobs or making it possible to do jobs with less skilled workers, so you don't have to pay workers as much. So this ability to earn, these higher incomes is really being curtailed by what technology is bringing to the table. I know this feels really depressing. I promise we'll get happier. The other piece of depressing news, if we look at what is education doing about this, just kind of a little education history lesson. Horace Mann established the system that we have now. He took it from Eastern Europe, brought it back to the United States in the late 1890s. And really what he was looking to do was to create an obedient, efficient army and workforce. That's what the system was built to do. This was during the Industrial Revolution. You got Ford, Carnegie, you got those folks looking for efficient assembly line workers. And so that's a lot like what the school looks like, right? We've got students divided by age and ability and subjects, and all of those are efficiency structures, not really educational or pedagogical structures, right? Check my time. Okay. So that's where the value, you needed kind of basic skills and the ability to kind of participate in this efficiency, industrial workforce. So you needed reading, writing, arithmetic. So this is what classes look like. Those were the skills that were valued. So I ask us to think a little bit about, now that we're in the information age, this is a picture right from some of our own scientists here in this building, what are the skills that they value? What are the skills that are valued if it's not reading, writing, arithmetic, or is it? Right? Are those still the things that we value the most? Is it something else? So this looks like a smart group. So we're going to try to answer that question together here. I promise no beach balls, you won't get hit, but I do want you to take a minute to do what I call a sticky note throwdown. You all have sticky notes on your table. I'm going to give you just 2 minutes to think about this question. What skills do you think we need to be successful in today's world? I want you to just write on your sticky notes. You can throw them down and share them with your table, or you can just keep them to yourself, whatever you'd like. But take 2 minutes to think about what are skills that you think you need to be successful in today's world and maybe even beyond today's world. Go. All right, we're going to do this really fast. I'm just going to point to a table and someone tell me one skill you think is important or necessary to be successful in today's world. Go, this table. It's fine.
Understanding where your food comes from.
Understanding where your food comes from. Okay. What about that table back there? Empathy. Great. This table. Resilience. That table back there. Knowing fact from opinion. Good. All right, I'm going to put you guys on the spot. Creative thinking. All right, how about, wait, there you go, with your hand raised. Communication. What else? I heard something? Critical thinking. Reading? Okay, yes, all right. So I appreciate that. Hopefully you have your sticky notes. Chances are, I've done this a few times, these are the kinds of things, I heard some of these things come up. These are the kinds of things that typically come up when I ask this question. These are the things that employers tend to value, we as humans tend to value in working on a project with one another. That's a pretty good list if we could be teaching that in our schools, right? And I go back to those tests that we talked about earlier and how we perform against those. Guess how many of these skills are tested on those tests? Right? So again, I wonder, I want to do better on those tests. Don't get me wrong, it's nice, but I really care about those things that are going to drive us forward. And it's not just me, right? I think that we pretty much did it here in this room. We came up with some of those same things. But if we want to take our own word for it, here's just some folks out there, World Economic Forum. Here's the skills that are going to be needed in the future. They say what's declining, what's growing. I'm going to go kind of quick because I got a lot to cover. I'm sorry, guys. Here's another one from Forbes. Here you see creativity, emotional intelligence, critical thinking. We talked about those. Here's another list, creativity, problem solving, innovation, critical thinking. I asked our own scientists here. I interviewed about 25 of them. So what does it take to be successful in your lab? Take a look at it. Curiosity, creative thinking, critical thinking. That takes up more than half. Collaboration, teamwork really rounds out the graph. Science knowledge was 5% of the answers. Okay? Another way to think about it, when I'm stuck, well, how can I possibly know what to teach that they're going to need 100 years from now or even 20 years from now? I think, well, what are the things that were valued 100 years ago that are still valued now? That's a good bet. Those are probably going to be valued 100 years from now too, right? So that's another kind of way to look at it. What are the skills that have been necessary for us to move innovation forward? So if I contrast that education in the industrial age with education in the information age, here's the way I would summarize it. Information is ubiquitous. It's on all of our phones. We can access it at any given time. So there's really not as much value placed on simply knowing or memorizing content and information. Instead, we've got to be looking at things in a cross-curricular way and problem solving real-world issues in a cross-curricular way. And using curiosity, creativity, critical thinking to make those connections and drive innovations that technology can't do, at least not yet, okay? All right, so now I'm gonna get to those 4 things that might get you a little bit of edginess at your dinner table. The first is Common Core state standards. I really don't know why this, it's kind of tired, it may not be that controversial anymore, but I just like to put it out there just to clarify what it is and what it isn't, okay? And I'm not, there's lots of different views on it that we can debate, but I want to give you some facts about it and what it's done, I think, for some of our teachers and students. So the first thing you should know is it's what students should know and be able to do. It is not a national curriculum. It just sets what students should know by certain grade levels and in reading and math. It also started with career and college readiness in mind. So standards before that were always built here. What do we need to know at kindergarten? And then where do they grow to in first grade and second grade? The Common Core started the other way around and said, what do we need to know in an internationally benchmarked way to be college and career ready? And let's work backwards from that. And you'll see what that results in is a really increase in rigor and a focus on conceptual understanding. And I focus on Common Core, but also the next generation science standards have also picked up that same sort of trend of thought. And just to give you an example of what this looks like, and you teachers in the room, here's what I'd say. If you know a teacher, give them a hug. Like, this is the kinds of things that this has done for them. And I don't say it's bad, but it's hard. So in language arts, text complexity. What used to be a second grade text is now considered a first grade text, just flat out. Emphasis on writing. So there's much more emphasis, and that takes time for kids to be able to learn to write. There's a much bigger emphasis on nonfiction. Used to be about 70% fiction in the elementary grades, and now there's the Common Core says that should be about 50% nonfiction and fiction. The reason for that is when they get to college, what are you reading mostly? Nonfiction, right? History books, science books. So there's a reason for it, but that's hard. It's a big shift to make. And you'll see this emphasis on the word evidence throughout education now, having kids cite evidence. We talked about critical thinking. I think that was one of those skills. So if you're citing evidence, whether it's in reading or in science, for your rationales and your explanations, that's a big push. For mathematics, I'm going to focus particularly just for sake of time on conceptual understanding. I want to show you this, and I know you won't be able to read it all, but this is the way we used to teach math, okay? 3 times 5 equals 15. Memorize it, okay? So now, with an emphasis on conceptual understanding, look at all the different ways. And I say teachers get to or have to teach math because you want to make sure kids are understanding that at a conceptual level. If you just memorize it, that's not going to help you when those numbers get bigger. If you ask them to explain, why are you carrying that 1? They can't tell you at all. But if you start teaching, we can do skip diagrams, all right? We can do repeated addition. So they're teaching all these different ways to really get a full number sense with our kids so they understand what's happening with the numbers. We can look at a number line, 3 hops of 5, right? Different kids learn different ways, so we need to approach different ways to get them there. All right, we can look at arrays, 3 rows of 5. It keeps going, equal groups. And then this is all just the pictorial stage. We do a whole manipulative stage before that where we're actually standing up in groups of 5 and working with little manipulatives in groups of 5. And then we go to the pictorial stage, right? Back to the strip diagram. So you're going to see these are all just little tools of the trade, but the point is we're teaching kids much more conceptually about what number sense really means. And this happens in science too. I want to read to you kind of what science standard used to sound like and what it sounds like now. So a science standard before next generation science standard might have sounded like this. Explain how cells transform energy from one form to another through the process of photosynthesis and respiration. Identify the reactants and products in the general reaction of photosynthesis. So you're explaining, you're identifying, okay? That sounds a lot like just knowing information, one of the things we just said we don't value so much, right? Now that standard looks something like this. Use a model to illustrate how photosynthesis transforms light energy into stored chemical energy. So the whole idea of using a model, being able to depict something illustratively, to be able to take it from the beginning of the process to the end of the process and explain why it's happening, use evidence to explain that, all of that has made for a much richer and deeper expectation of students, which I believe is really important. But it is a lot of work, so I just wanted to make sure you guys know the kind of shifts that are happening that educators are having to face and are facing and are doing it. I really believe that's happening in many, many classrooms. I'm not going to actually play this for you for sake of time, but if you've seen out there, there's this video that kind of infuriates me. It talks about, look how stupid Common Core math really is. And there's this video, I'll just describe it. It's out there on YouTube if you want to find it. It's on Facebook. And I really asked, or is it? So what this does is it says, here's the, I forget the actual problem, something times something. And on the right-hand side, a guy does the typical algorithm and solves it in probably, 30 seconds. Goes on to make a cup of coffee, enjoy his coffee. And all that time is what it's, he did it so quickly and had this cup of coffee. And then on the other side is someone who's teaching the conceptual and explaining how this actually works. And it takes all of that time to do that. And his point, I think, in here is that this new math or this Common Core math is so stupid. But I guarantee you, the high school teacher that's going to get this kid would much rather have the kid that was on the left than the kid on the right. Because you're really preparing them with that number sense. And not only that, if your point is to make it faster, you should just use the calculator. I'm just going to put that out there. But my point in this is just to say, if you get into Common Core debates, let's fight fair. Let's talk about, it's not really fair to say someone who's solving an algorithm and compare that to someone who's explaining and teaching how mathematics and how multiplication works. That's not fair. So just be, open to what is it we're trying to do? Is there value in teaching conceptual math? And then have the discussion from there. All right, second one, standards-based grading. Where am I? Okay. So this is a fun one. This will be some hot topics. Maybe it'll bring up some memories for you from high school. So I want to talk about standards-based grading is simply a framework to communicate what students know and are able to do at any given point in time. And this is something not all teachers have control to do this within their classroom. Sometimes we work with schools to implement this sort of grading system. It has pluses and minuses. I just want to share a little bit about what it is. Essentially, there's 4 elements to it, and I'm going to take you through each one. The first one is aligning assignments to standards. So the point of this is if you get a grade, let's say Sasha and Jamal were in pilot school and they both got a grade of 90%. Who do you want to fly with? They're both 90%, doesn't matter, right? You have no more information. And same thing happens with our kids. If we get two kids with a 90%, do we really know what they know and what they don't know? What does this kid know and what does this kid not know? So, and I know this is sort of an extreme example, but what if you got a little more information? Now who do we want to fly with? I could see, doing several things with Sasha, but not getting in an airplane. So the particular skills matter. The point here is to think about, instead of just giving an assignment and one grade, what you can do is take your assignment and really think about what standards is it trying to assess. There might be 3 or 4 different standards on a given test. So you might have 3 or 4 different grades for that particular exam or for that particular assignment. So you would say, in fact and opinion, I give them this score, and this standard, I give them this score, right? So that's just something to think about. If you align content, align your grades to actual standards, that's one element of standards-based grading. Now, it leads to the next one. If you're going to do that, the last thing you need is 100 degrees of complexity in trying to do that. If you're going to have 3 or 4 grades on an individual test, you don't have to think, well, is this an 89 or is this an 88, So I'm a big fan of moving from a 100-point system to a 4-point rubric or a 3-point rubric or a 5-point rubric. You can pick it, but make it a reasonable number to decide, are they just, kind of beginning, emerging on the standard? Are they proficient? Or have they mastered it? Okay, and if you have those fewer levels of complexity, then you can kind of really do that assigning your standards, your grades by standard a little bit easier. The next one, a little controversial too, eliminate zeros. I know some people are a big fan. You got to teach these kids, if you don't do the work, you're going to get a 0, okay? But just look for a minute about what that does. The way we're so ingrained in this sort of A through F 100-point system that it seems intuitive, but it's really not. This is really what it looks like. There's 10 points of A, 10 points of B, 10 points of C, and then you end up with this 60 points of F-dom, right? This failure zone that's really quite large. So if you get a 0, if it means you failed, what's the difference between a 59 and a 0? You're still failing, right? The difference is there's no hope with a 0. A 0 tells the kid, I don't care if you learn this because you're never going to actually be able to master anything from this point forward. My proof for that, what if it's the other way around? What if there was 60 points of A-dom? It would be virtually impossible to not get straight A's, right? So just something to think about. Now, the biggest argument I get when I say eliminating zeros is, well, what about that kid that they just don't show up? They didn't do it. I have to teach them responsibility. That goes to the next one. Standards-based grading is about separating non-academic skills from academic skills. If your grade is meant to reflect what students know and are able to do, I almost say it's like unethical to include, here's extra credit if you bring in your food drive cans, by Friday. Well, you're inflating a grade, but the grade's supposed to reflect what you know and are able to do, and how does bringing in food cans have anything to do with that? So separate that out. Those things are important, but you have a separate rubric for that, for those sort of habits of mind or habits of work, right? So responsibility, coming to school on time, being prepared, working well with others, all those things can be part of a separate scale. So lots more. I know I'm just running through all of this, but that's the second kind of little trend out there or instructional thing you might want to know about is standards-based grading. The next one is inquiry-based science. And this one is really just about, we've talked a little bit about that in the introduction, mirroring how scientists think and act. It aligns with the next generation science standards that I mentioned, and it's essentially based on the idea that the person doing the most work is the one doing the most learning. I'm going to give you just a quick example of what that might look like. So historically, if you're doing a lesson on circuits, let's say, you might read a chapter on how circuits work, and then sometimes might end there, but if you're lucky, you had a nice teacher, you would go into the lab to confirm that, do kind of a confirmation lab. Let's say, yes, we learned that if you connect the circuits, then it can light the bulb, and there you go. The difference is, let's flip that, because the scientists up there right now, they aren't confirming anything that they read in a textbook to be true. They are exploring and trying to discover answers to questions that aren't answered yet. So let's give our students questions that they don't know the answers to. That really will give them the practice and that sort of skill. So you send them in there with a little bit of background information, right? You got to get some vocabulary, so we're all on the same page. But then give them a bulb, some wires, and a battery, and have them figure out 3 ways to make it light, 3 ways to make it not light. And then you can bring in, it's not that you don't have to learn the science, you do, but it's just kind of changing the order a little bit. Bring it in afterwards. Were you able to make it light? Do you want to know why? Now I actually want to read about the science. Or were you not able to make it work? Do you want to know why? Yeah, I want to read about it so I can get it to work, right? So it's just flipping that a little bit so you get that engagement, you have that inquiry first. So our 4 kind of tenets are students don't know the answer that they're supposed to get before they go in. Second, they play some sort of driving role in determining their process for learning, so they will create their plan for how they're going to figure this out. Teachers and students construct meaning, they're journaling, they're kind of logging their thinking and their results as they're going, so that metacognitive action is happening. And finally, the students are working as hard, if not harder than the teacher. That's kind of our little rubric for inquiry-based science. All right, last little one I'm going to give you before talking about what we're doing at the Institute is project-based learning. And this is the idea of sort of sustained inquiry, cross-curricular content, really working on real-world projects and problems, and collaborating within and across a classroom. And the best way I know is to give you an example of this. This is one of the projects that we do with students called Moments to Remember. Students partner with a retirement home. They meet up with a senior friend. They interview them. They write a biography of their life. Right? So you can see there's a lot of social emotional learning, a lot of those skills that we talked about that are important that come from that. But what about content? So my contention is that if you have a meaningful, authentic learning experience, a project-based experience, you can connect whatever content you need to connect. You just have to get a little creative. So for example, in this one, you could do theme. So we don't just have them do a chronological biography of their senior friend. We ask them to really think about what is the theme of this person's life? What made their life what it is? Is it love of family or overcoming obstacles, right? So that gives them a sense of theme, which is the English language arts standard at almost every grade. Social studies is pretty easy. You can look at life in different eras. So as they were growing up, historically, what was happening and how is that different? For math, you could do number sense. What we did was we put the senior's life on a timeline, so you could do equivalent fractions and talk about what was happening at a third of their life and what's the equivalent fraction to that, right? Science, we had to get really creative on this one. This is tough. How can we connect science? In this case, we ended up pairing them with a senior friend who was born in the same month, so they're both born in January. So then they could discover that the night sky, even though they were born 60 years apart, looked remarkably the same. So a reason to talk about patterns in the night sky. We also include social emotional learning skills, which go really well with project-based learning. So that's just kind of an example of what project-based learning looks like. There's lots of research around how it leads to engagement, how it leads to achievement, but essentially increasing those long-term retention of content because they had a relevant context. Remember at the beginning, you're trying to break through. If they're dealing with relevant content, then you can have that long-term retention. Problem-solving and collaboration skills. It improves their students' attitudes toward learning. They see why they're learning it. It has a purpose. All right, prepares them for deeper learning, those higher level skills, and it's really flexible. It can work in all different types of schools, and like I said, you can attach whatever type of content you want to it. All right, I threw those 4 at you just to remind you: Common Core standards, standards-based learning, standards-based grading rather, inquiry-based science, and then project-based learning. So that's a little what's going on in the world. Now I'm going to be selfish a little bit and tell you a little bit about what we're doing with it, because we have a lot of fun working with students and teachers in these very concepts, particularly in inquiry-based science and project-based learning. So I'll just spend a little bit of time talking about student programs and our teacher programs. For student programs, this is kind of what it looks like. Here's a quote from one of our kids. Instead of reading a book, you actually get to touch and feel what you're exploring. The things we offer are after-school programs. We have an after-school cohort that we're doing through the fall and spring semesters. We work with about 100 kids in that program. We have field trips that are just growing. We have classrooms come here from all over the state, or we go out to schools as well and do field trips in their classrooms, which is a lot of fun. We try to bring things that you couldn't necessarily replicate in a classroom, so they have exposure to new and exciting things. We have summer camps all summer long. We have about 10 camps. We work with about 250 kids, I'd say, over the summer. Science on Saturdays, about 6 to 8 Saturdays a year. We offer the opportunity for parents or grandparents and their kids to come in and do some science together, which is a lot of fun. High School Journal Club, I believe we had Heather, is she here? I think she works with the High School Journal Club. Thanks for coming. So we have usually about maybe 15, 20 high school kids that can come and work with our postdocs, and they do what's a journal club, which is what our scientists do. They read scientific journals and study them together and get to do their own investigations. And we just started even doing birthday parties, just a fun way to, on Saturdays, or usually Saturdays, but a kid can come explore and have a birthday party at our facility, just a way to kind of infuse science in their daily life. The biggest thing you should know about our student programs is they're just growing like crazy. You can see in 2016 we worked with about maybe 700, 800 kids, and we're projected to do at least 2,500 this year. So it's just growing like crazy, and we love it. Our building is just down the hill, kind of down and to the left a couple of blocks. So we have a facility dedicated to creating classrooms where curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking thrive, and we love to have the kids there. I'm going to show you a quick video of what it looks like because you've heard me talk long enough. So here is a little bit of what our student programs tend to look like.
We got to hold 4 different kinds of animals: fire-belly newt, toad, a cockroach, and a millipede.
We're making a water capsule. There's like bubble wrap inside that's covering the marshmallow, aka the astronaut.
Everybody do it with me now. Insane. So we have a lot of fun. Sometimes it really doesn't feel like work. So that's a little about our student programs. Our teacher programs, here's a quote from one of our teachers: "I got ideas on how to spark curiosity in the classroom and to help make my class more engaging," which is, again, engagement I feel like is our first step toward achievement for sure. We work with folks all over, mostly here in kind of the Midwest, but we are gaining exposure all over the country. We love to go wherever teachers want us to go. We do professional development. Next Gen Inquiry Professional Development is our science professional development, trying to teach that inquiry-based science. We also offer lessons with that, so teachers can take them right into their classrooms and try them out for themselves. We also offer Science on the Gram, which is a conference every summer here for teachers, which really exposes them not only to science content, but also sort of that classroom culture and climate piece as well. And then we have project-based learning professional development. That's our Blue Apple line. So we offer professional development and the actual projects, like Moments to Remember that you just looked at. So again, we love working with teachers. Our kind of motto around the professional development, sorry if language offends you, but we want to have PD that doesn't actually suck. That's kind of our goal. So, because it just can be so awful. So we really try to help teachers figure out what they're looking for and how can we provide some help in that, because it's just an impossible job to do by yourself. So just like with student programs, I'd rather show it to you. Here's what one of our Blue Apple projects looks like in the classroom.
So in Take a Stand, my kids were able to pick a topic, learn how to debate respectfully with each other, and then they were able to build a podcast and share that issue with other parents and people around the world.
You have to get along with people that disagree with you to see if they have a better point. If you're debating, you do it politely. When you're debating, you don't fight. You gotta just be kind fighting.
My kids were able to collaborate and share ideas throughout this whole project.
Sometimes she would be like, no, this is better, and I'd be like, why do you think that? And then we would kind of have a mini debate. Me and Emma just listened to our first one we ever did, and it was horrible. Yeah, so we're definitely glad we leveled it up. We think we should spray for triple E because 4 people have died and 10 people have been confirmed in Michigan to have the disease.
The past couple weeks, they've been super pumped about science and they've been really excited to continue our project. It's been awesome.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun just making the podcast and debating, doing the research. We just had a ton of fun doing this project.
My kids were really engaged because they knew they were going to share their podcast with their parents, the community, and the world.
Though we're all finished with the project, we're still going to keep researching.
So my favorite part of that is the kid that says, even though we're done with the project, we're going to keep researching it. You know, a fourth grader, like I just think that's what it's about. If you can develop that love of learning, that's what will sustain them their whole life and where you will really be that teacher that makes a difference and that matters to them. So I'll end with 3 things that you can do to help if you would like, and then I'll open it up for questions and answers. Number 1, support teachers. Don't be the teacher or the person that thinks this about teachers, please. This is definitely the case. No teacher got into it for this, right? They're having to deal with that. Tell a teacher thank you. They have a really hard job. Second, if you have young people in your life, be a part of this movement too. Here's a few things that you can change in your dialogue. Pick one of these. You don't have to memorize all of these that resonates with you. But instead of saying, let me show you, say, let me get out of your way. Instead of saying, I expect you to meet the standards, tell them that you expect them to surpass their wildest dreams. And instead of telling them they're a great student, make sure that they know that they matter. Instead of do you understand, say, how will you use this information to make this world a better place? Or finally, instead of saying, what do you want to be when you grow up, make sure that they know that if their dream doesn't scare them, even just a little, it's not big enough, right? Be a part of that solution for us. And finally, don't be a stranger. Like I said, we're down the road. If you have any questions about education in general, what we do, how we can work together if you're an educator, we would love to talk to you. There's my email. There's our website right there. We've got a table over there. You're welcome to ask some questions there as well. So thank you for your attention. I know I droned on a little bit long, and want to open it up for questions and answers.
How do schools get involved with your after-school cohort, for instance? And what is the requirement in the funding options for that?
Sure. So for after-school cohort in particular, it's usually parents are usually the one kind of looking for that. It is completely subsidized by the Institute, so there is no cost to our students for that. Even we provide transportation if that's a particular issue. If you're interested in that, you can go to the website vaei.org, and there's a place to click on for more information. You can email me directly if that's easier as well.
Hi, I'm James Mitchell, former chairman of the board of Michigan Technological University. I was wondering what higher education, for example, Michigan Tech could do to help you with your program or to cooperate with you.
Great, I appreciate that. I do think that getting in with teacher pre-service programs is a great place for us. So one of the things we've done with pre-service teachers is do the Blue Apple projects, because it gives them a project-based learning unit that the teacher may not have time to put together, whereas a student teacher might be able to go into the classroom and do that. We'd also I think we're working with some colleges on working with the faculty and coming up with some inquiry-based science or project-based learning, some of the things we do in professional development that they could incorporate into their curriculum. So we welcome opportunities to talk with colleges. I think if we can, those teachers that are in school to become teachers, which there's far too few of them, that's a whole nother lecture, but that we can catch them when they're inspired to teach this way and give them the tools early on, I think is critical. So I would welcome a conversation and brainstorming opportunities to do that.
This is really encouraging to see what you guys are doing and what schools are doing to develop individuals in these grades. In my line of work, I coach, mentor, and teach individuals that are entering the workforce to kind of bridge that gap between what employers are looking for and the skills these individuals have. And I see there's really a crucial need and a huge gap right there at the current moment. So what are we doing, or maybe what can we do to try to accelerate the process in the immediate future?
Well, I think that is a huge gap, right? Just for the reasons we just talked about, the educational system that these kids are coming out of hasn't changed in 130 years. So it's not focused on how do you work with students and collaborate, all the things that the workforce is actually looking for. So I would, again, welcome opportunities to talk about that. We don't have an initiative specifically that we're doing, but we'd be open to talking about that. And whether it's bringing in what we do for field trips, there's no reason we couldn't do that with recent graduates of high school to come in and let's do an inquiry-based science investigation together, get them collaborating, get them thinking critically. We'd love to do that.
If you have questions, I know Tara and her team's around, as well as other members of the Institute as well. So thanks again for